Chapter 1. The Yuletide Invitation. The snow began falling in earnest just as the last train from London pulled away from the little station at Hawthorne Cross. Hercule Poirot, wrapped in his heaviest wool overcoat and clutching a small valise, stood on the deserted platform, watching the white flakes swirl around the single gas lamp. It was the evening of December 23rd, and the world seemed to have retreated into silence, as if the very air itself had paused to watch the storm gather strength. He had not planned to be here. Indeed, the invitation had arrived only 2 days earlier, delivered by a breathless young messenger to his flat in Whitehaven Mansions. The envelope was thick cream vellum, sealed with a crest depicting a stag beneath a holly wreath. Inside was a single sheet of paper in a hand that trembled slightly. "My dear Monsieur Poirot, I implore you to come at once to Ravenwood Hall. A matter of the gravest nature has arisen, one that threatens not only my family, but the very spirit of Christmas itself. I have seen a phantom, a figure from the past who walks the halls each night, whispering accusations that chill the blood. The police laugh at me, but I know you will understand. The trains are still running, though the roads may soon close. Come, I beg you. Your reputation as the greatest detective of our age is my only hope. Yours in desperation, Sir Reginald Ashford. Beat." Poirot had read the letter twice, frowning at the dramatic phrasing. Sir Reginald Ashford was not unknown to him. A minor baronet with a fortune derived from textiles and a reputation for eccentricity. Yet the mention of a phantom intrigued him. Poirot had dealt with many ghosts in his career, most of them quite corporeal, driven by greed, fear, or revenge. Still, the timing was inconvenient. Christmas was a time for quiet reflection, for the little grey cells to rest. And yet, the phrase, "a figure from the past," had lodged itself in his mind like a splinter. He had consulted Captain Hastings, who had merely laughed. "Ghosts at Christmas, Poirot? Sounds like Dickens. You're not going, surely?" "Mon ami," Poirot had replied, already packing. "When a man of Sir Reginald's standing begs for help in such terms, one does not refuse lightly. Besides, the snow is beautiful, n'est-ce pas? A little adventure will do us good." Hastings had declined to accompany him, citing a family gathering in the country. So Poirot had travelled alone, changing at Crewe and enduring the slow, rattling journey north. Now, standing in the cold, he wondered if his curiosity had led him into folly. A low beam of headlights cut through the swirling snow. A large black motor car, its chrome grille glittering under the gas lamp, pulled up to the platform. The driver, a tall man in a chauffeur's cap and greatcoat, stepped out and approached. "Monsieur Poirot?" "Oui? Sir Reginald sent me. Name's Wilkins. If you'll follow me, sir, we'll have you at Ravenwood Hall in half an hour, though the lanes are treacherous tonight." Poirot inclined his head and allowed the man to take his valise. As they drove away from the station, the snow grew thicker, piling against the windscreen in soft, relentless waves. The headlights illuminated only a narrow tunnel of white, and the car swayed as it navigated the narrow country roads. Wilkins spoke little, but when he did, his voice was low and respectful. "The house has been in the family for 3 centuries, sir. Sir Reginald inherited it 10 years ago, after his brother's death. Been quiet until this year." "And this phantom?" Poirot asked mildly. Wilkins glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Seen it myself, sir. Twice. A tall figure in a dark cloak, face hidden. Walks the long gallery at midnight, carrying a lantern. Leaves no footprints in the snow outside." Poirot raised an eyebrow. No footprints. Interesting. Aye, and the family's in a state. Lady Ashford won't leave her room. The children are frightened. Even the servants whisper of curses. They rounded a final bend, and Ravenwood Hall loomed out of the darkness. It was a vast Elizabethan manor of grey stone, its many gables and chimneys silhouetted against the stormy sky. Lights blazed from every window, as though the house itself were resisting the encroaching night. A Christmas tree stood in the centre of the forecourt, its coloured lights winking through the snow, and holly wreaths adorned the double doors. Wilkins brought the car to a halt. Poirot stepped out, brushing snow from his shoulders, and looked up at the house. For a moment, he thought he saw a shadow move behind one of the upper windows. A tall figure, briefly outlined against the light, then gone. The doors opened, and Sir Reginald Ashford himself appeared, a tall, thin man, in his late 50s, with a shock of white hair and eyes that darted nervously. He wore a velvet smoking jacket and a silk cravat, but the elegance was undermined by the tremor in his hands. "Monsieur Poirot!" he exclaimed, hurrying forward. "Thank God you've come! The storm is worsening. You must be frozen." Poirot allowed himself to be ushered inside. The hall was magnificent. A high ceiling with exposed beams, a roaring fire in the great hearth, and a towering Christmas tree laden with glass ornaments and silver tinsel. The scent of pine and cinnamon filled the air, yet the warmth was deceptive. The house felt watchful, as though it held its breath. Sir Reginald led him to a small drawing-room where a second fire crackled. A decanter of brandy waited on a side table. "You must forgive the haste," Sir Reginald said, pouring 2 generous measures. "I did not exaggerate in my letter. The phantom has appeared every night for a week. Last night it spoke, whispered a name I have not heard in 30 years. He handed Poirot a glass. The name of a man who died on Christmas Eve, long ago. A man who was wronged. Poirot sipped the brandy, letting the warmth spread through him. "Tell me everything, Sir Reginald, from the beginning. Leave nothing out, however small it may seem." Sir Reginald sank into an armchair, his face pale in the firelight. "It began on the first Sunday of Advent," he said. "A letter arrived. No postmark, no stamp. Inside was a single line, 'The past does not rest.' That night, the figure appeared in the gallery. Since then, each night it returns, and each time it leaves something behind. A memento of that Christmas 30 years ago." He reached into his pocket and drew out a small tarnished silver locket. He opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a faded photograph of a young woman, beautiful and serious, wearing a high-necked dress from another era. On the reverse was an inscription in faded ink, "To Eleanor, Christmas 1895. Poirot studied the locket carefully. "And this Eleanor?" "My brother's fiancée," Sir Reginald said. "She vanished on Christmas Eve, the night my brother died. They said it was an accident, a fall from the tower, but there were rumours, whispers of foul play." He looked up at Poirot, eyes haunted. "I swear to you, Monsieur Poirot, I had nothing to do with it, but the phantom knows things only Eleanor could have known. It accuses me. It says I will pay." The clock on the mantel struck midnight. Outside, the wind howled, rattling the windows. Somewhere above them, in the long gallery, a floorboard creaked. Poirot set down his glass. "We shall see, Sir Reginald, we shall see what this phantom truly is. But first, I must meet the household, all of them. No one is above suspicion." Sir Reginald nodded, relief mingling with fear. Of course, They are all here for Christmas. My wife, my son and daughter, my nephew, the staff, everyone." As he spoke, a soft footfall sounded in the hall. A woman appeared in the doorway, tall, elegant, with dark hair pinned in an old-fashioned style. She wore a crimson velvet gown, and her eyes were red from crying. "Reginald," she said softly, "it's happening again." She looked at Poirot, and something like hope flickered in her expression. Poirot rose, bowing slightly. "Lady Ashford, I presume?" She nodded. "You are our last hope, Monsieur Poirot." He smiled, small and reassuring. "Hope, madame, is a dangerous thing, but the truth is far more reliable." Outside, the snow continued to fall, burying the world in white. Inside Ravenwood Hall, the past was stirring, and Hercule Poirot had arrived just in time to meet it. Chapter 2. Shadows in the Snow. The grandfather clock in the hall struck 1 as Poirot followed Sir Reginald up the broad oak staircase. The house was quiet now, the earlier bustle of arrival having subsided into the heavy stillness that comes after midnight in a snowbound manor. Only the wind moaned outside, pressing against the leaded windows like an impatient visitor. Sir Reginald paused at the landing. "The long gallery is this way, Monsieur Poirot. It runs the length of the east wing. That's where it appears." Poirot nodded, his small feet making no sound on the thick carpet. He had already begun his mental catalogue. The portraits on the walls, stern-faced ancestors in ruffs and powdered wigs, the faint scent of beeswax polish and old wood, the way the floorboards creaked in a particular rhythm, as though the house itself were breathing. They entered the gallery through a pair of double doors carved with holly leaves. The room stretched away into shadow, lit only by a single row of wall sconces. At the far end, a tall Christmas tree stood in a corner, its lights unlit, its branches heavy with glass baubles that caught the faint glow and threw it back in tiny, trembling stars. Sir Reginald stopped. "It usually appears near the window seat there," he whispered. "At first we thought it was a servant playing a prank, but the servants swear they've seen nothing. And the figure, it moves like no living man." Poirot walked slowly down the length of the gallery, his eyes flicking from one detail to another. He noted the deep window embrasures, the heavy velvet curtains that could conceal a person easily, the absence of any visible footprints on the polished floor. He stopped at the window seat and looked out. Beyond the glass, the snow fell steadily, blanketing the formal gardens in unbroken white. The moon had risen, a pale disk behind the clouds, and the light it cast was cold and blue. No tracks marred the surface, no ladder, no rope, no sign of how a figure might have approached the window from outside. "Intriguing," Poirot murmured. "If the phantom leaves no footprints in the snow, then either it flies, or it does not come from outside." Sir Reginald shivered. "You mean it is already in the house?" "Or it never leaves the house at all," Poirot replied calmly. "We shall see." They returned to the drawing-room. Lady Ashford had not moved from her place by the fire. She looked up as they entered, her face pale against the crimson of her gown. "Did you see anything?" she asked. "Not yet, madame," Poirot said, "but the night is young." Sir Reginald rang for a servant. A moment later, a young maid appeared, small, dark-haired, with wide eyes. She curtsied nervously. "Fetch the others, Mary," Sir Reginald said. "The family and the staff. Monsieur Poirot wishes to meet everyone." The maid hesitated, glancing at Lady Ashford, who gave a small nod. Then she hurried away. While they waited, Poirot took a seat near the fire and studied the room. A large oil painting hung above the mantel. A Victorian Christmas scene, A family gathered around a tree, their faces solemn. In the foreground stood a young woman who bore a striking resemblance to the photograph in the locket, Eleanor. "Your brother's fiancée?" Poirot asked, nodding at the painting. Sir Reginald followed his gaze. "Yes, Eleanor Marchant. Beautiful, wasn't she? Reginald, my brother, adored her. They were to be married on 12th night. And she disappeared on Christmas Eve." "The night of the accident," Lady Ashford said quietly. "There was a quarrel. No one knows exactly what happened. Reginald found her body at the foot of the tower stairs. The police said she fell, but there were bruises on her arms, as though she had been held." Sir Reginald's face tightened. "The coroner ruled it accidental. My brother was distraught. He took his own life 3 days later. Poison. It was a terrible Christmas." Poirot said nothing, but his eyes were sharp. The door opened again. One by one, the household entered. First came the son, Edward Ashford, a tall young man in his late 20s with a military bearing and a guarded expression. He wore a dinner jacket, though the hour was late. Beside him was his sister Clara, perhaps 22, with the same dark hair as her mother, but a restless energy that made her seem always on the point of movement. Next was the nephew, Philip Ashford, a cousin once removed, in his 30s, with a sharp face and quick eyes. He carried a glass of whisky and offered Poirot a polite smile that did not reach his eyes. Then the staff, Wilkins the chauffeur, still in his greatcoat, Mrs. Danby, the housekeeper, stout and sensible, the butler, Mr. Graves, elderly and dignified, the cook, Mrs. Potts, wiping her hands on her apron, and the 2 maids, Mary, and another girl named Jane. They stood in a loose semicircle, looking at Poirot with varying degrees of curiosity and apprehension. Poirot rose. "Thank you for coming at this late hour. I am Hercule Poirot. I am here to investigate the appearances of this phantom. I shall ask questions in due time. For now, I wish only to observe." He let his gaze move slowly over each face. Edward's jaw was tight, Clara's hands twisted together. Philip sipped his whisky, watching Poirot over the rim of the glass. The servant stood stiffly, eyes downcast. "Tell me," Poirot said suddenly, "has anyone here seen the phantom clearly?" Silence. Then Clara spoke, her voice small. "I saw it last night in the gallery. It stood by the tree, and it looked at me." "What did it look like?" Poirot asked. "Like a man, tall, in a long cloak. The hood was up. I couldn't see the face, but it moved slowly, as though it had all the time in the world. And it spoke. No, it just stared. Then it turned and walked away, down the corridor. I followed, but when I reached the end, it was gone." Poirot nodded. "Thank you, mademoiselle." He turned to the servants. "And you, Mrs. Danby? You have worked here long?" 35 years, sir," the housekeeper replied. "Since before Sir Reginald's father died." "You knew Eleanor Marchant?" A flicker crossed her face. "Aye, a sweet girl, kind to the staff. She didn't deserve what happened." "And you believe the phantom is her?" Mrs. Danby hesitated. "I don't know what to believe, sir. But the house has been restless since that letter came." "The letter without a postmark," Poirot said. Sir Reginald nodded. "It arrived on Advent Sunday. The past does not rest. Since then the appearances began." Poirot looked around the room. "I see no one who resembles the description of the phantom. Tall, cloaked. Perhaps someone has been using the servants' passages or the attics." Mr. Graves cleared his throat. "The attics are locked, sir, and the passages are narrow, only used for coal and laundry." "Yet they exist," Poirot said mildly. A sudden gust rattled the windows. The fire flared, throwing long shadows across the walls. Then, from somewhere above, came a sound, a soft, deliberate footstep. 1, 2, 3. Everyone froze. The footsteps continued, slow and measured, moving along the corridor overhead. They paused, then resumed, coming closer to the staircase. Sir Reginald's face drained of colour. "It's starting again!" Lady Ashford clutched her husband's arm. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs and began to descend. Poirot stepped forward, his hand raised for silence. He moved to the doorway and looked up. A figure stood at the head of the stairs, tall, cloaked in black, the hood obscuring the face. In its right hand, it held a lantern, the light dim and yellow. It did not move, it merely stood, watching them. For a long moment, no one breathed. Then the figure turned and walked away, back along the corridor, the lantern light fading into darkness. The silence that followed was profound. Poirot turned to the assembled household. "The phantom has shown itself, and now we know it is no ghost." He smiled, small and certain. "It is flesh and blood, and it has made its first mistake." Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the tracks of the living and the dead alike. Inside Ravenwood Hall, the hunt had truly begun. Chapter 3. Echoes of Forgotten Feasts. The morning after the apparition dawned grey and bitter. Snow had piled high against the windows of Ravenwood Hall, sealing the house in a white cocoon. Poirot awoke early, as was his habit, and descended to the breakfast room where a modest fire burned. The air smelled of coffee, toast, and the faint lingering scent of pine from the Christmas tree in the hall. Sir Reginald was already there, alone at the long table, staring into his cup as though answers might rise from the dark liquid. He looked up when Poirot entered. "Good morning, Monsieur Poirot. I trust you slept?" "Like a man who has much to think about," Poirot replied, taking the seat opposite. "And you, Sir Reginald?" "Not at all. I kept expecting the footsteps again. Every creak of the house made me jump." Poirot poured himself a coffee and added 2 lumps of sugar with precision. "The phantom is clever. It appears only when it wishes to be seen. Last night it chose the staircase. Dramatic, yes, but also calculated. It wished to be observed by all." Sir Reginald rubbed his temples. "Why? To frighten us? Perhaps. Or to distract us. The best illusions, mon ami, are those that make you look in one direction while the truth happens in another." A maid entered with a tray of bacon, eggs, and kippers. Poirot waited until she had gone before speaking again. "Today, I wish to learn more about that Christmas 30 years ago. The events of 1895. I need facts, not rumours. You will tell me everything you remember." Sir Reginald hesitated. It was painful. My brother Reginald, everyone called him Reggie, was 28. I was 23. We were close, though he was always the favoured son. Father died that year, leaving the estate to him. Reggie was to marry Eleanor in January. She was the daughter of a neighbouring landowner, a quiet girl with a sharp mind. Everyone loved her. And the quarrel on Christmas Eve? Sir Reginald looked down. "I don't know the details. Reggie and Eleanor went for a walk after dinner. They returned separately. Reggie was furious, his face red, his hands shaking. Eleanor was pale, tearful. She went straight to her room. Later that night, Reggie found her body at the bottom of the tower stairs. The tower is in the west wing. Narrow spiral steps, stone floor. She had fallen or been pushed. The police said accident. Reggie never believed it." "He took his own life 3 days later," Poirot said quietly. "Yes, laudanum. He left a note. I cannot live with what I have done." Or what he thought he had done. The family hushed it up. Suicide was a scandal. We said he died of a broken heart. Poirot sipped his coffee. And Eleanor? What became of her body? Buried in the village churchyard. No one claimed her after Reggie's death. Her father had died years before. Her mother remarried and moved to Italy. The family here, my parents, paid for the funeral. Interesting. And the heirloom you mentioned. Sir Reginald reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet pouch. He opened it to reveal a delicate gold brooch in the shape of a holly sprig, set with tiny emeralds and a single ruby at the centre. This was Eleanor's. She wore it on Christmas Eve. It was found on the tower stairs after her death. Reggie gave it to her as an engagement gift. After he died, my mother kept it. I inherited it when she passed. Poirot took the brooch and examined it under the light. Beautiful workmanship. Georgian, I think, and the inscription on the back. Sir Reginald turned it over. There, in tiny script, E.M. from R.A. 24 Deck, 1895. Christmas Eve, Poirot murmured, the night she died. He returned the brooch. Now, Sir Reginald, who else knew the story? Who might have reason to resurrect it now? Sir Reginald sighed. Everyone in the house knows the basics. The servants were here then. Mrs. Danby, Mr. Graves. They remember Eleanor fondly. The younger ones have heard the tale, but no one speaks of it openly. It's a family shame. And your nephew, Philip? He's a cousin once removed, yes? My brother's son by a later marriage. No, wait. Philip is the son of my cousin Arthur. Arthur was Reggie's best friend. He died young, and Philip was raised partly here. He's always been ambitious, hopes to inherit, though the title goes to Edward. Poirot nodded. And Edward and Clara? They were born after the events. Yes. Edward is 30, Clara 22. They grew up hearing whispers. Clara is sensitive, always has been. Edward is practical, like his mother. The door opened. Lady Ashford entered, followed by Clara. Both looked weary. "Good morning," Lady Ashford said. "We heard voices." Poirot rose and bowed. "Madame, mademoiselle, please join us." Clara sat beside her father. "Have you found anything, Monsieur Poirot?" "Not yet, mademoiselle, but I have learned much about the past. Tell me, do you believe the phantom is Eleanor?" Clara shivered. "I don't know. Last night, when I saw it by the tree, it felt like she was looking at me. Not angry, sad, as though she wanted me to understand something." "Understand what?" Clara hesitated. "There's a story the servants tell, that Eleanor left a letter. She wrote it before she died, but it was never found. Some say it named her killer." Sir Reginald's face darkened. "That's nonsense. No letter was ever mentioned at the inquest." "Perhaps it was hidden," Poirot said thoughtfully. "In a place only Eleanor knew." Lady Ashford spoke. "The Christmas decorations. She loved them. She helped hang the tree herself that year. Perhaps something is hidden among the ornaments." Poirot's eyes brightened. "An excellent thought, madame. We shall examine the tree." After breakfast, the family and Poirot gathered in the hall. The Christmas tree stood tall, its branches laden with baubles, tinsel, and small candles, unlit, but ready for the evening. Poirot approached it slowly, studying the decorations. "Tell me, Sir Reginald, which ornaments are the oldest?" "The glass ones," he replied. "They belonged to my grandmother. Eleanor loved them particularly." Poirot began to examine the baubles, one by one. Most were ordinary, painted scenes of snow, reindeer, angels, but near the top, half hidden by branches, hung a small silver star, tarnished with age. He reached up and carefully removed it. Inside, the star was hollow. A tiny rolled paper fell into his palm. Poirot unrolled it. The handwriting was faded but clear. "My dearest Reggie, if you find this, know that I never doubted your love. The quarrel was my fault. I saw what I should not have seen. Your cousin Arthur, he is not who he seems. He covets the estate, the title, he has plans. I cannot marry you if it means danger to you. Forgive me. I choose to leave tonight, but I fear he will not let me go." Eleanor. The room fell silent. Poirot looked up. Arthur, the father of Philip's branch of the family. Sir Reginald's face was ashen. Arthur died in 1900 of pneumonia. He was never suspected. Yet Eleanor feared him, Poirot said. And now, 30 years later, someone wishes the past remembered. Someone who knows this letter exists. He looked around at the assembled faces. Edward stared at the paper in shock. Clara's eyes were wide. Philip had entered unnoticed and now stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. The snow outside continued to fall, thick and silent. Inside, the echoes of forgotten feasts had begun to speak. Chapter 4. The Midnight Carol. Christmas Eve arrived with a deceptive calm. The snow had eased into a gentle drift, and the grounds of Ravenwood Hall lay silent under a thick white blanket. Inside, the house prepared for the traditional festivities. Holly garlands draped over doorways, mistletoe hung in the drawing-room, and the scent of roasting goose and spiced wine drifting from the kitchens. Yet the air felt charged, as though the manor itself anticipated the next appearance of the phantom. Poirot spent the day methodically exploring the house. He measured distances, noted the layout of the servants' passages, and examined the lock on the attic door, sturdy but showing fresh scratches. He spoke little, observing instead Edward's tense silences, Clara's nervous glances toward the gallery stairs, Philip's too casual interest in the old family portraits. By evening, the family gathered in the great hall for the Christmas Eve supper. Candles flickered on the long table, casting warm light across silver and crystal. Sir Reginald presided at the head, Lady Ashford at his side, her face pale but composed. Edward sat stiffly, Clara beside him, twisting a napkin in her lap. Philip occupied the far end, smiling easily, though his eyes rarely left Poirot. The meal progressed in strange silence, broken only by the clink of cutlery and the occasional forced pleasantry. Poirot ate sparingly, his mind elsewhere. The silver star and its hidden letter lay in his pocket, a small weight that felt heavier than gold. As dessert was cleared, plum pudding aflame with brandy, the clock struck 11. Sir Reginald rose, glass in hand. "A toast," he said, voice unsteady, "to family, to forgiveness, and to the hope that this Christmas may lay old ghosts to rest." Glasses were raised. The toast was drunk. Then, from somewhere above, a sound began. It was faint at first, a single note, pure and clear, like a bell in the distance. Then another and another forming a melody, a carol. Silent Night. Sung not by voices, but by an instrument, perhaps a music box, slow and deliberate, the notes hanging in the air like frost. The family froze. Clara's hand flew to her mouth. Lady Ashford clutched her husband's arm. The music grew louder, closer, descending the staircase note by note. Poirot stood, small and alert, his eyes fixed on the doorway. The carol reached its final verse and faded into silence. For a moment, nothing moved. Then the phantom appeared. It stood framed in the doorway, taller than any of the men present, cloaked in black velvet that seemed to absorb the candlelight. The hood was drawn low, shadowing the face. In one gloved hand, it held a small lantern, its flame steady and unnaturally bright. In the other a folded paper. It did not move at first. It merely stood, regarding the table with an air of quiet judgment. Sir Reginald's voice cracked. "Who are you? What do you want?" The figure raised the lantern slightly, illuminating its own form. Then, slowly, it stepped forward. The room seemed to hold its breath. The phantom walked past the table, past the stunned faces, and stopped before the Christmas tree. It reached up and placed the folded paper among the branches, tucking it behind a large glass angel. Then it turned. It faced Poirot directly. For a heartbeat, the two regarded each other, one small, precise, the other tall and shrouded. No words passed between them. The figure inclined its head once, almost in acknowledgement, then turned and walked back toward the doorway. It vanished into the shadows of the hall. No one spoke for a long moment. Poirot moved first. He crossed to the tree, retrieved the paper, and unfolded it. The handwriting matched that of the earlier letter. "The truth lies in the tower. Seek it before midnight, or the past will claim another soul." He looked up. "The tower, where Eleanor died." Sir Reginald's face was grey. "It's locked. Has been for years." "The key was lost long ago." "Then we must find another way," Poirot said. "The phantom wishes us to go there, tonight." Lady Ashford shook her head. "It's dangerous. The stairs are steep, the floor uneven, and after all these years—" "Precisely, madame. After all these years, the past is speaking. We must listen." Edward stepped forward. "I'll come with you." Clara nodded. "Me too." Philip smiled thinly. "Curiosity is a powerful thing. Count me in." Sir Reginald hesitated, then sighed. "Very well, but we go together, no one alone." They fetched lanterns and coats. The tower was in the west wing, a narrow spiral of stone steps rising to a small observation platform. The door at the base was heavy oak, banded with iron. Mr. Graves, summoned from the servants' quarters, produced a ring of old keys. After several attempts, one turned with a groan. The door swung open, releasing a rush of cold, musty air. Poirot led the way, lantern held high. The steps were steep and worn, the walls damp, cobwebs brushed against their faces. The family followed in single file, breathing shallowly. At the top the platform was small, barely room for 6. A low parapet surrounded it, and beyond lay the snow-covered gardens, the moon casting long shadows. Poirot examined the floor. "Here is where she fell," he said quietly. "The stones are uneven, easy to trip." He knelt, running his fingers along the edge. Then he paused. Something glinted in the lantern light. A small metal object wedged between 2 stones. He pried it free, a brass key, small and ornate. "Lost long ago?" he asked Sir Reginald, holding it up. Sir Reginald stared. "That's the key to the tower." "It vanished after Eleanor's death." Poirot pocketed it. "Then someone has been here since, recently." He turned to the parapet. On the inner side, carved into the stone, was a faint inscription, almost worn away by time. EMRA, 24/12/1895. Poirot traced the letters with his finger. Their initials, the date of her death. Clara whispered, "She left a mark, a message." Poirot looked out over the snow. And now another message. "The phantom is not content with whispers. It demands action." He turned back to the group. "We return to the house. There is more to discover before midnight." As they descended, the wind rose again, howling through the tower like a distant voice. The carol had stopped, but the notes lingered in memory, silent yet not forgotten. Midnight approached. The phantom had spoken twice tonight, once in music, once in writing. Poirot knew the next message would not be so gentle. In the hall below, the Christmas tree stood waiting, its lights unlit, its secrets half revealed. The past was not resting. It was rising. Chapter 5. Suspects by the fireside Christmas morning broke cold and clear. The snow had finally ceased, leaving Ravenwood Hall surrounded by a pristine white world that glittered under a pale winter sun. Inside, however, the atmosphere remained heavy. The events of the previous night, the carol, the phantom's silent delivery of the note, the discovery of the key in the tower, had left everyone on edge. Sleep had been fitful or absent for most. Poirot had risen before dawn. He spent the early hours in the library, reviewing notes he had made in his small leather-bound book. By the time the household began to stir, he had already requested that everyone gather in the drawing-room at 10 o'clock. No excuses, no delays. The room was warm, the fire roaring high in the grate. The Christmas tree stood in its corner, now fully decorated with candles waiting to be lit that evening. On the mantelpiece rested the silver star, the 2 letters from Eleanor, and the brass key, silent witnesses to the unfolding mystery. One by one they arrived. Sir Reginald and Lady Ashford entered first, both looking older than their years. Sir Reginald's hands trembled slightly as he poured sherry for himself and his wife. Lady Ashford sat close to the fire, her shawl pulled tightly around her shoulders. Edward arrived next, wearing a dark suit that made him look more like a mourner than a son celebrating Christmas. Clara followed, eyes red-rimmed, clutching a small lace handkerchief. Philip was last, arriving with an easy smile that seemed almost defiant in the tense atmosphere. Poirot stood near the window, hands clasped behind his back, watching them settle into their seats like pieces on a chessboard. "Thank you for coming," he began, his voice calm and precise. "We have reached a point where silence is no longer possible. The phantom has spoken, through letters, through music, through its very presence. It points to the past, to the death of Eleanor Marchant and the suicide of Reginald Ashford. And it accuses." He turned to face them fully. "Someone in this room knows more than they have told. Someone has read Eleanor's letters. Someone has placed them where they would be found. Someone has walked these halls at night, cloaked and hooded, carrying a lantern. Today, we shall discover who." Sir Reginald cleared his throat. "Monsieur Poirot, surely you don't mean to imply—" "I imply nothing, Sir Reginald. I state facts. Let us begin with the facts." He moved to the centre of the room. First, the letters. One was hidden inside a Christmas ornament for 30 years. The second was delivered last night by the phantom. Both are in Eleanor's handwriting. Both mention fear of someone, originally Arthur, cousin and best friend of the elder Reginald. Arthur died in 1900, yet the accusations continue. Why now? Why this Christmas? He looked at Philip. "You are the descendant of Arthur. You have lived here on and off since childhood. You know the house well. You know the stories." Philip raised an eyebrow. "I know the stories, yes, everyone does. But I was born 20 years after Eleanor died. I can hardly be blamed for what happened then." "Perhaps not," Poirot said mildly. "But you might be blamed for what happens now. You hope to inherit Ravenwood one day, do you not? The title will pass to Edward, but the estate, unentailed, could be willed elsewhere." Philip's smile tightened. "If you're suggesting I staged ghostly appearances to frighten Uncle Reginald into changing his will, that's rather dramatic, even for a Poirot investigation. Drama is often necessary when truth hides behind politeness," Poirot replied. He turned to Edward. "You, Monsieur Edward, are the heir. Yet you have been unusually quiet. You work in the city, yes? Finance. You understand money. You know the value of this estate." Edward stiffened. "I've been quiet because I'm trying to make sense of all this. My father is terrified. My sister is frightened. I'm trying to protect them, not add to the confusion." "And yet," Poirot continued, "you were seen leaving the West Wing yesterday afternoon, before we went to the tower. You said you were checking the heating pipes, but the heating pipes are in the East Wing." Edward's jaw tightened. "I may have been mistaken about the direction." "Or perhaps you were looking for something," Poirot said softly. "The key, perhaps? Or checking that nothing had been disturbed?" Edward said nothing. Poirot turned to Clara. "Mademoiselle Clara, you have seen the phantom most clearly. You described it standing by the Christmas tree, looking at you. You said it seemed sad, not angry. Why do you think it looked at you specifically?" Clara twisted her handkerchief. I don't know. Maybe because I'm the only one who still believes the old stories. The servants used to tell me about Eleanor when I was little. They said she was kind. I always felt sorry for her." "Sympathy is a noble thing," Poirot said, "but sympathy can also be used. Someone might rely on your soft heart to spread fear through the house." Clara looked down. Poirot now addressed the empty space where the servants would have stood had they been summoned. The staff, Mrs. Danby, Mr. Graves, Mary Jane. They were here 30 years ago. They remember Eleanor. They may know secrets they have kept all these years. Loyalty can be a heavy burden. He paused, letting the silence grow. "Finally, Sir Reginald and Lady Ashford. You were both young then. Sir Reginald, you were in the house the night Eleanor died. You said you heard nothing. But you were close to your brother. You knew his moods. You knew when he was angry. You knew when he was afraid." Sir Reginald's voice was hoarse. "I told you. I was in my room. I didn't know what happened until Reggie found her." "And Lady Ashford?" Poirot asked gently. "You married Sir Reginald 10 years after the tragedy. Yet you wear a brooch that once belonged to Eleanor. A gift from your husband's brother to his fiancée." Lady Ashford touched the small cameo at her throat. "Reginald gave it to me years later. It was a family piece. I wear it because I feel for her. She never had her chance at happiness." Poirot nodded slowly. "Compassion. Again compassion. It appears in many forms tonight." He stepped back, surveying them all. "Someone here has a motive. Inheritance, guilt, fear of exposure, revenge, or perhaps something simpler, money. The estate is valuable. Debts have been mentioned in whispers. A scandal, even an old one, could affect certain financial arrangements." Philip laughed quietly. "You're good, Monsieur Poirot, but you're fishing in the dark. None of us has admitted to anything." "True," Poirot said, "but someone will, because the phantom is not finished. It has one more appearance to make, I think, and when it does, it will not be so subtle." He looked at the clock. "It is now 11:30. In half an hour, we shall light the candles on the tree and sing carols, as tradition demands. The phantom may return then, or it may wait until midnight, when the house is quiet. Either way, I shall be ready." He turned to the door. "Until then, I suggest you all remain in this room. No one goes upstairs alone. No one wanders the corridors. We stay together." Sir Reginald nodded wearily. "As you say, Monsieur Poirot." As Poirot moved toward the door, Clara suddenly spoke. "Wait, there's something I didn't tell you." Everyone turned to her. "Last night, after the phantom left the note, I thought I saw someone in the gallery. Not the phantom, someone real, moving quickly. I couldn't see who it was, but they were carrying something. It looked like a cloak." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "You did not mention this before." "I was afraid," Clara whispered. "Afraid it might be one of us." "Very well," Poirot said. "Now we know the phantom is not working alone. There is a living hand behind the ghost." He looked around the room once more, meeting each pair of eyes in turn. "Remember this, mes amis. The past does not rest because someone will not let it rest, and that someone is in this room." With that he stepped out into the corridor, closing the door softly behind him. Outside, the house was silent, but Poirot knew it was not empty. The little grey cells were working at full speed. The pieces were falling into place. Midnight was approaching. Chapter 6. The Phantom's Riddle. The drawing-room clock ticked towards midnight with maddening precision. The family remained seated in uneasy silence, each avoiding the eyes of the others. The fire had burned low, casting long shadows across the carpet. Poirot stood by the Christmas tree, hands clasped behind his back, watching the room as though it were a stage and he the only audience. At precisely 11:55, the first sound came, a soft, deliberate creak from the corridor beyond the door. Everyone stiffened. Sir Reginald's glass trembled in his hand. Lady Ashford reached for her husband's arm. The door opened slowly. No figure stood there. Instead, a small object rolled across the threshold and came to rest near the hearth. A rolled parchment tied with a red ribbon. Poirot stepped forward, picked it up, and untied it without haste. The handwriting was the same as before, Eleanor's. The riddle is simple, yet the answer is buried deep. I was not pushed. I did not fall by accident. The hand that held me was not my own. Look to the one who profits most from silence. The key you found opens more than the tower. It opens the truth. Midnight will reveal all. Poirot read it aloud, his voice steady. When he finished, he looked up. "The phantom grows impatient," he said. "It wishes us to solve the riddle before the clock strikes 12. Edward leaned forward. "What does it mean? The one who profits most from silence." Poirot smiled faintly. "It means exactly what it says, monsieur. Someone benefits from the past remaining hidden. Someone who would lose if the truth were known." Philip laughed, a short, sharp sound. "That could be any of us. We all have something to lose if old scandals resurface. Reputations, inheritances, peace of mind." "True," Poirot agreed, "but the riddle points to motive, and opportunity, and means." He moved to the mantelpiece and picked up the brass key they had found in the tower. "This key," he said, holding it up. "It was lost 30 years ago. Yet it appeared recently, wedged in the stone. Someone placed it there. Someone who knew we would go to the tower. Someone who wanted us to find it." Clara frowned. "But why give us the key? Why not just destroy it?" "Because the phantom wants the truth revealed," Poirot said. "It is not here to punish in secret. It is here to force confession." Sir Reginald's voice was hoarse. "Then who is it? Who is the phantom?" Poirot turned to him. "That, Sir Reginald, we shall discover in a few minutes. But first, let us examine alibis." He began pacing slowly before the fire. "Last night, when the phantom appeared on the staircase, where was everyone?" Sir Reginald spoke first. "I was here in this room with Lady Ashford." Lady Ashford nodded. "We were together the whole time." Edward said, "I was in the library. I heard the footsteps and came running." Clara hesitated. "I was in my room, reading. I came down when I heard the music." Philip shrugged. "I was in the billiard room, smoking, alone." Poirot stopped pacing. "Alone? Interesting." He turned to Philip. "You have no witness to your whereabouts." Philip spread his hands. "Nor does Clara, nor Edward, for that matter." "True," Poirot said, "but let us consider the cloak Clara saw in the gallery. Someone moving quickly, carrying something. A cloak, perhaps, to hide in the shadows after the performance." He looked at each in turn. "Someone had to be in two places at once last night, appearing as the phantom, and then returning to their normal position before suspicion fell." Edward's face tightened. "That's impossible. The timing was too tight." "Not impossible," Poirot said, "merely difficult." The phantom appeared at the top of the stairs, descended a few steps, then retreated. That took perhaps 30 seconds. Plenty of time for someone to run down the servants' staircase, remove the cloak, and re-enter the drawing-room. He paused. "But there is another possibility. The phantom did not need to run. The phantom was already among us." A murmur rippled through the room. Poirot continued. "The figure was tall, cloaked, hooded, face hidden, but the hands gloved, yes, but the build was masculine. The walk was deliberate, unhurried, a man almost certainly." He looked at the three men in the room. Sir Reginald, Edward, Philip. Sir Reginald is too frail to climb stairs quickly. Edward is fit, but his alibi is weak. Philip is tall, athletic, and has no alibi at all. Philip's smile faded. "You're accusing me?" "I accuse no one yet," Poirot said. "I merely state facts." He turned to the clock. It was 3 minutes to midnight. "And now," he said, "the phantom has promised revelation at midnight. Let us see if it keeps its word." The seconds ticked by. At exactly 12, the lights in the room dimmed, though no one had touched the switches. A faint glow appeared in the doorway, growing brighter. The phantom stepped into the room. It was the same figure, tall, cloaked, lantern in hand. But this time it did not stop at the threshold. It walked slowly to the center of the room, directly before the Christmas tree. The family stared, frozen. The phantom raised its free hand and pointed, first at Sir Reginald, then at Lady Ashford, then at Edward, then at Clara. Finally, it pointed at Philip. Philip stood slowly. "Enough of this charade." He reached up and pulled back the hood. The face revealed was not Philip's. It was Mrs. Danby, the housekeeper. Her expression was calm, almost serene. The room erupted in gasps. Mrs. Danby spoke, her voice low and steady. "I am not the phantom you think I am. I am the messenger. The true phantom is not one person. It is justice, long delayed." She set the lantern down. "I have served this house for 35 years. I was here the night Eleanor died. I saw what happened. I kept silent because I was afraid for my position, for my life. But Eleanor was kind to me. She did not deserve to die." Sir Reginald's voice cracked. "What are you saying?" Mrs. Danby looked at him. "Your brother did not kill her, nor did she fall. She was pushed by someone who feared exposure." She turned to Philip. "Your father, Arthur, was the one Eleanor feared. But Arthur did not act alone. He had help from someone in this room." Philip's face had gone pale. Mrs. Danby continued, "I found Eleanor's second letter, the one she wrote after the first. It was hidden in the lining of an old trunk in the attic. It named names. I kept it all these years. When I learned of the debts, the plans to sell the estate, I decided the time had come." She reached into her cloak and produced a folded paper. "This is the final letter. Read it, Monsieur Poirot." Poirot took it and unfolded it. The handwriting was shaky, but clear. Reggie, Arthur is not alone. He has an accomplice, someone closer, someone who stood to gain everything if I were silenced. I cannot say the name here. If I die tonight, know it is murder. And the murderer is your brother. He has betrayed us both." The room went deathly silent. Sir Reginald staggered. "No, it can't be." Poirot looked at him. "The letter is clear, Sir Reginald. Your brother, the elder Reginald, did not commit suicide out of guilt. He was killed to ensure silence." He turned to the others. "The phantom was never a ghost. It was Mrs. Danby, seeking justice for Eleanor. But the true killer has been among us all along." He looked straight at Sir Reginald. "And now, Sir Reginald, the riddle is solved. The one who profits most from silence is you." The clock struck the first chime of midnight. Outside, the wind howled. Inside Ravenwood Hall, the past had finally spoken, and the truth was more terrible than any ghost. Chapter 7. Veils of Deception Unveiled. The first chime of midnight echoed through Ravenwood Hall like a judge's gavel. The drawing-room seemed to shrink around the assembled family, the firelight flickering across faces frozen in shock, disbelief, and dawning horror. Mrs. Danby stood motionless in the centre of the room, the black cloak still draped over her shoulders, the lantern at her feet casting a steady golden glow upward. Sir Reginald's voice broke the silence, thin and trembling. "This cannot be! My brother, he would never—" Poirot raised a hand, gentle but commanding. "Patience, Sir Reginald. The letter speaks for itself, but letters can be forged. Truth, however, cannot be hidden forever." He turned to Mrs. Danby. "Madame, you have played your part well. A loyal servant turned avenger. But the phantom's work is not yet done. There is one more veil to lift." Mrs. Danby nodded slowly. "I only did what Eleanor could not. She was my friend. She confided in me that night. She was leaving the house, running away because she feared for her life. She told me she had seen something she should not have seen. She said the danger came from within the family, from someone she trusted. She looked directly at Sir Reginald. She never named you, but she said it was someone close enough to silence her forever." Sir Reginald sank into the nearest chair, his face ashen. Lady Ashford knelt beside him, gripping his hand tightly. Poirot stepped forward. "Let us reconstruct the night of Christmas Eve, 1895. Eleanor and the elder Reginald quarrelled after dinner. She returned to the house alone. He followed later, angry. She went to the tower, perhaps to think, perhaps to fetch something she had hidden there. She was followed, she was confronted, she was pushed." He paused, letting the words settle. "The coroner called it accident. The family called it tragedy, but Mrs. Danby knew better. She found the body, saw the bruises on Eleanor's arms. She saw the fear in her eyes, even in death. She kept silent then, young, frightened, dependent on the family's goodwill. But she never forgot." Edward spoke, his voice rough. "Then why now? Why this Christmas?" Mrs. Danby answered quietly. "Because I learned the estate was to be sold. Philip told me. He said the debts were too great, that Sir Reginald had decided to liquidate everything. The house, the lands, gone. I could not let Eleanor's murder be buried with the house she loved." Philip's face had drained of colour. "You're mad. I never—" "You did," Poirot interrupted smoothly. "You spoke of it in the servants' hall 2 weeks ago. You were overheard. And you, Monsieur Philip, have been most active in this little drama." All eyes turned to him. Poirot continued. "You knew the stories. You knew the house's secrets. You found Eleanor's letters, perhaps in the attic, where Mrs. Danby had hidden them years ago. You saw an opportunity. not to reveal the truth, but to use it. Philip's mouth opened, then closed. "You began the appearances," Poirot said. "You wore the cloak, you carried the lantern, you placed the letters where they would be found. You knew Sir Reginald's guilt, his fear that he had failed his brother, that he had not protected Eleanor. You used that fear to break him, to make him question his own mind, to make him change his will in your favour." Philip laughed, a brittle sound. "You have no proof." "I have Mrs. Danby's testimony," Poirot said. "I have the timing of your movements. I have Clara's sighting of someone in the gallery carrying a cloak. And I have this." He reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet pouch, the same one Sir Reginald had used to show the brooch. From it he drew not the brooch, but a single glove. Black kidskin, identical to those the Phantom had worn. "Found in your room, Monsieur Philip, under the mattress, a careless mistake." Philip's eyes widened. Poirot turned to Sir Reginald. "But there is more. The final letter, the one Mrs. Danby read, contains a lie, or rather, a half-truth. Eleanor wrote that the murderer was your brother, but she wrote it in haste, in fear. She meant the other brother, the one she had seen plotting with Arthur. She meant you, Sir Reginald." Sir Reginald stared at Poirot, eyes wide with horror. "No, no, you were there that night," Poirot said gently. "You followed Eleanor to the tower. You argued again. She threatened to tell Reggie everything, about your debts, your plans to discredit him, to take the estate for yourself. You panicked. You pushed her." Lady Ashford cried out, "Reginald!" Sir Reginald shook his head violently. "I didn't mean to. I only wanted to stop her. She was going to ruin everything. Reggie would have disinherited me. I grabbed her arms. She struggled. She fell backward. I didn't mean—" He broke down, shoulders heaving. Poirot's voice remained calm. "And then, 3 days later, you gave your brother the poisoned wine. You made it look like suicide. You wrote the note yourself. I cannot live with what I have done." A confession that served two purposes: guilt for Eleanor's death, and cover for your own crime. Edward stood, fists clenched. "You monster!" Clara was weeping silently. Philip had backed toward the door. "This is madness. I had nothing to do with—" "You aided the deception," Poirot said. "You found the letters. You staged the hauntings. You thought to drive Sir Reginald to madness or suicide, then inherit what remained. But Mrs. Danby saw through you. She took the cloak. She became the Phantom to force the truth into the light." Mrs. Danby spoke one last time. "I wanted justice for Eleanor, not revenge, justice." Poirot looked around the room. "The veils are lifted. The Phantom was Mrs. Danby. The murderer was Sir Reginald. The manipulator was Philip. 3 hands in one tragedy." He turned to Sir Reginald. "The police will be called in the morning. The snow has stopped. The roads will be clear." Sir Reginald nodded slowly, defeated. "I am ready." Philip lunged for the door, but Edward was faster. He seized his cousin's arm. "You're not going anywhere." Poirot sighed, small and weary. "It is over. The past has been laid bare." Outside, the moon shone on the snow-covered grounds. Inside, the fire burned low, but the room felt strangely lighter, as though a great weight had been lifted. The Christmas of Ravenwood Hall would be remembered not for joy, but for truth. And in the quiet that followed, Hercule Poirot allowed himself one small satisfied nod. The little grey cells had triumphed once again. Chapter 8. The Dawn of Revelation. Christmas morning dawned with a fragile beauty. The snow had settled into a crisp white mantle over Ravenwood Hall, and the first rays of sun pierced the eastern sky, turning the frost on the windows into diamonds. Inside the great hall, the Christmas tree stood tall, its candles still unlit, its ornaments catching the light in soft, muted colours. The house was quiet, as though it too had held its breath through the night's revelations. Poirot had not slept. He had spent the small hours in the library, writing a careful account of the events for the police inspector, who would arrive once the roads were cleared. The confession of Sir Reginald Ashford lay beside him on the desk. A signed statement, dictated in a voice barely above a whisper, detailing the night of Eleanor Marchant's death and the poisoning of his brother 30 years earlier. Philip Ashford's complicity in the recent hauntings had been added in a separate note, witnessed by Mrs. Danby and Edward. The household gathered one last time in the drawing-room as the clock struck 8. The fire had been rekindled, but the warmth could not dispel the chill that lingered in the room. Sir Reginald sat in his armchair, shoulders slumped, hands folded in his lap. Lady Ashford stood behind him, one hand resting lightly on his shoulder, a gesture of support, or perhaps of farewell. Edward and Clara sat close together on the settee, faces pale but composed. Philip stood apart, near the window, staring out at the snow-covered grounds with an expression of dull defeat. Mrs. Danby waited near the door, still wearing her plain black dress, the cloak of the phantom folded neatly over her arm. Poirot entered last, carrying a small tray with coffee and biscuits. He set it on the side table and poured for everyone, his movements precise and unhurried. When all had been served, he took his place before the Christmas tree. "Mes amis," he began, his voice gentle yet firm, "the night has passed, the truth has been spoken, now we must face what remains." He looked first at Sir Reginald. "Sir Reginald, you have confessed to the murder of Eleanor Marchant and the murder of your brother. The police will take you into custody when they arrive. You will face justice. But you have also shown remorse. That is something." Sir Reginald nodded slowly. "I have carried this weight for 30 years. I thought silence would protect me. It only poisoned everything else." Poirot turned to Philip. "Monsieur Philip, your role was lesser but no less culpable. You exploited the past for personal gain. You will also answer to the law. But the estate will not pass to you. Sir Reginald has already instructed that it be divided between Edward and Clara, with provisions for the staff who have served faithfully." Philip said nothing. He merely looked down at his hands. Poirot's gaze moved to Mrs. Danby. "Madame, you have served justice in your own way. The police may question you, but I believe they will see you as a witness, not an accomplice. Your actions, though unorthodox, brought the truth to light." Mrs. Danby inclined her head. "I only wanted Eleanor to rest in peace, and the house to be free of lies." Finally, Poirot looked at Edward and Clara. "You two are the future of Ravenwood Hall. The shadow of the past has been lifted. Use what remains wisely. Honour the memory of those who suffered, but do not let it define you." Edward spoke, his voice steady. "We will, Monsieur Poirot, and we thank you. Without you, none of this would have come to light." Clara wiped her eyes. "Eleanor, she can finally be at peace." Poirot smiled, small and sad. "Yes, mademoiselle, the phantom has gone. There will be no more footsteps in the night. No more carols from empty corridors." He walked to the tree and struck a match. One by one, he lit the candles. The flames danced upward, illuminating the ornaments, the silver star, the faded photograph of Eleanor that Clara had placed among the branches that morning. The room filled with soft light. Poirot stepped back. "This is Christmas morning," he said quietly. "A time for new beginnings, even in sorrow. The past has spoken. Now let the future speak." Outside, the sound of an engine reached them. The first motor car of the day, making its way up the cleared lane. The police had arrived. Sir Reginald rose slowly. He looked at his wife, then at his children, and finally at Poirot. "Thank you, Monsieur Poirot, for ending the nightmare." Poirot bowed slightly. "It was my duty, Sir Reginald, and my privilege." As the officers entered the hall, Poirot stepped aside. The formalities would take time: statements, arrests, transport to the station. But the detective had no wish to prolong the pain. He gathered his valise and coat. Lady Ashford approached him. "Will you stay for luncheon? The roads are open now." Poirot shook his head. "I thank you, madame, but I have a train to catch. London awaits, and perhaps a quiet Christmas dinner with Captain Hastings." She pressed his hand. "You have given us back our house and our peace." Poirot smiled. "Peace is a fragile thing, madame. Guard it well." He walked to the door, pausing once to look back at the lighted tree. The family gathered around it, the candles burning steadily. Outside, the snow sparkled in the morning sun. The air was cold and clean. Poirot breathed deeply. The little grey cells had rested. The case was closed. And somewhere, in the quiet churchyard where Eleanor Marchant lay, the wind whispered through the holly, carrying the faintest echo of a carol. But this time it was not a phantom. It was peace.